Say we dive in.
I feel fully oxygenated, dude.
Fully oxygenated.
Fully oxygenated. That was great.
It's good. It's quick and effective.
I feel like you know what you're doing.
It's a quickie.
It's quickie. Yeah. I've been wanting to integrate some type of breathwork practice into my morning routine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I have 10, 15 minutes with movement and light and water, but I feel like I'm missing a breath element.
I mean, breath work was never the thing that was at the forefront of my awareness, or the thing that I was like, I'm really stoked on. I tried Wim Hof. I did Kundalini, I did all the different, oxygen advantage. And it's interesting because as like a body worker, as like a somatic practitioner, as like a teacher, coach, breath work wasn't the thing that really was like, oh, this is powerful. Right.
Yeah.
And until recent years, I started combining it with movement, meditation, all the other things. And I had this powerful experience in 2017. I was working for MAPS, just as like a volunteer. And I had this guy who was like, you should go do this holotropic breathwork session with this guy named Stan Groff. Oh, who was like the OG, right?
Yeah.
And I actually, at that point, this is kind of embarrassing, but I didn't know who he was. And I was like, okay. He's like, dude, it's so powerful. It's like if you did a DMT session. And I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
No way. And I went and did this session, and I had probably the most emotional release and physical pop in my spine. And I just started getting flooded with anger and sadness and tears. And I was like, where is this all coming from? And as that moved through me, I felt so empty, but so clear at the same time. And I had this clarity that came through as like, holy shit, before I'm a body worker, before I'm a teacher, before I'm a coach, before I'm anything, I'm actually a breath worker first, because breath is controlling everything.
Yeah,
if I'm working on somebody and they're not breathing,
right,
then their system's in a contracted state. If I'm whatever I'm doing. So I started, exploring with a lot of different things. And the thing that helped me the most in as far as morning routine, I was never good at meditating, but if I did breath work before, it would send me into a meditative state. Because you're spiking your nervous system.
Totally.
And what goes up must come back down, and you're just, and it's so it has helped me get into a meditative state more than anything.
Breath facilitates any physical activity.
Anything.
To the best possible outcome of it. I signed up for a Wim Hof breathwork class about a year ago. And on the day of the class, it was it was like an intro class, a 2-hour class. And it was going to be my first step in, because I had read about it. I had done some practices, and I signed up for this 1-day class. And I'm running late on the day. It was 10 a.m. and I was supposed to be out the door 20 minutes ago. So I'm running around, I'm grabbing my stuff. I got to bring my swim trunks for the cold plunge. I got to bring a towel. I got to get my water bottle. I sprint down the stairs of my apartment. I go to my car. I get in my car. I turn on the engine. The gas is low. I'm like, I'm not going to make it to Malibu with this much gas. So I drive out of my parking lot. I scrape the front bumper of my car. I'm not really paying attention to traffic. I'm speeding down Venice out in LA. And I pull into a gas station, and I pull in too quick, because I was trying to cut around somebody who I was being super impatient, and I try to cut around him, and my back right tire clips the curb and just pops immediately. And I pull in, and I was like, God, I'm not going to make my breathwork class. And in that moment, I was like, wait, I wasn't even breathing this whole time. It was such it was such an ironic thing. Yeah. I didn't make the breathwork class because I wasn't breathing. If I was just patiently driving and just hit the gas station, I would have made it on time probably. But it was a weird lesson in the moment to be maybe I'm not ready for Wim Hof if I can't even get gas without popping a tire.
People ask me what the best morning practice, what's the best breathwork practice to do, or what's the 5-10 minute thing that I should do in the morning. And it's it's not about what you do sometimes or for 5-10 minutes, but it's you are what you repeatedly do. And so in those moments, can you be aware of your breath? Breath is, one of the only things that you can be doing both consciously and unconsciously, and you have a choice. Like we can breathe right now together, or we don't have to think about it. We're still going to continue this podcast. Mm-hmm. And so the best practice is like, can you become aware of your breath during those sort of situations?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting because we live in this world where it's like, a lot of it's like, okay, let's hurry up to then slow down.
Yeah.
Like I was rushing to a yin class the other night and I'm like, shit, I'm not going to make it on time.
Yeah.
And I get there and I'm late and I'm just like, holy shit, it's going to take me probably the whole class just to get back to baseline where I was at before I was rushing
getting there. Yeah.
Prior to getting here.
Yeah.
But anyways, dude, Mr. Brent Pella, it's fucking an honor to have you here.
It's great to be here, my bro.
Yeah.
It's great to be here, man.
Dude, I didn't realize you were such a baller.
I could hoop a little bit.
You could hoop.
I could hoop a little bit.
You could hoop, man.
Yeah.
Is that always?
I played through college.
You did?
Yeah, I played at UC Santa Cruz for a couple years.
Dude, amazing.
Then transferred to Santa Barbara and broke my ankle. Yeah. But that got me into comedy. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise.
Can you break that down for us a little bit?
So I was at, in high school, I grew up in Davis, California, up by Sacramento.
Yeah.
Played varsity as a junior and senior. And I went to a summer camp at UC Santa Cruz right before my senior year. And I got player of the camp, best player at the UC Santa Cruz basketball camp for like kids 7 to 17. And the coaches said, come walk on. We're a D3 school. There's no scholarships, but it's all walk-ons and we would love to have you walk on. So I went there for freshman, sophomore year. And then I transferred to UC Santa Barbara for my junior year because I wanted to be closer to LA with more opportunities in film and media. And I was walking on to the Santa Barbara squad, hoping to be like 12th man. That's a D1 school. Yeah. I barely would have gotten any burn, maybe would have gotten a couple garbage minutes, but like to play D1 that's pretty rad. And dude,
I would happily bench warm.
Well, 100%. I hit a little growth spurt before my junior year, so I was feeling a little bigger. I was feeling a little quicker. I'd been working out with a D1 football guy who I went to high school with, so he was kicking my ass in the summer. And so I go to walk on at Santa Barbara. The whole tryout, I was doing really well. And then the last part of the tryout was a scrimmage with the current roster players. And like 3 plays in, I came down on some dude's foot and just snapped my ankle, hairline fracture. So I was on crutches for 3 months, or in a boot for 3 months or whatever. Yeah. And during that time, I'd switched my major from English to film and media. And because I was just sitting down all day, I couldn't move or anything. I decided to get more involved in the student newspaper and the student radio program because I'd always been a journalist. Like in high school, I did the student newspaper. I was sports editor. So I kind of refocused from the court to like the court adjacent. So I started writing about the team. I was doing like a sports radio show. And then I started doing film on camera interviews with a lot of student athletes in college. And then that got me into like film production, learning about cameras and shot styles and how to like create a set.
Rule of thirds,
the 180 line.
Right.
And then I just started getting into student films from there. And The Lonely Island was really big at the time. Andy Samberg and all those guys from SNL. And that was a huge inspiration to just start doing like comedy videos. Yeah.
Dude, amazing.
Yeah. Wow, so it was a cool pivot. It was an unexpected pivot.
I would like to dive in more on that. That's a lot of people listening might not know this as well, but our stories kind of parallel a little bit. When I first went to college, I actually went for film and production because I was a skateboarder.
Oh, cool.
And so I loved like making skateboarding films and stuff like that. And
nice.
I took my first semester in TV production and filming and ran the school announcements and that whole thing. And my instructor was so pissed off. Like he just had this basically what happened is he went to Hollywood and, kissed someone's ass for like 10 years and still didn't make it. And so he's like, I'm just going to retire, or I'm going to retire that and just become like an instructor. But he totally just killed that for me. He's like, you're going to be sitting at a desk for 20 hours a day. Like you got to go to Hollywood and be lucky to even make it, which is interesting. You think that was probably 2011 at the time. And so I dropped out, completely switched paths and went down like sort of the body psychology and physical therapy route. Mm-hmm. But I look back, and that was right before YouTube and Instagram started popping off, and you know, obviously film and production completely changed.
Yeah.
Now we have social media and all of that. So it's I think back about like, well, what if I just stayed in it? Like, what would my life look like? But full circle now, it's quite an interesting thing how big that has become, and especially in your world, like the pristine comedic skits that you put together so creatively.
Oh, thank you, bro.
I would love to get into the process of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Was there a driving force behind you, like comedy as an outlet? Was that just innate inside of you?
Oh man, it depends on who you ask, because my therapist would probably have a different answer. Probably something about my dad.
Trauma?
Yeah, trauma of some sort. Yeah. I was raised by a single mom. Grew up with a single mom. Parents split when I was 4. So, and my mom also had me when she was super young. Yeah. So she was kind of like my first audience, you know. And growing up, I was like, she raised me watching Friends and Saturday Night Live, and she remarried and had a daughter when I was 11. Yeah, and then they separated shortly after, so it ended up being me, my mom, and my sister from 11 onward. Yeah. So pre-11, it was just me and my mom, and then 11 onward, it was me, my mom, and my sister. So always had an audience of women. Yeah. So I was always being judged. No. Yeah. So she raised me watching SNL and Will Ferrell and all the Chris Farley era. Yeah. What a goat. And she just like, looking back on it now with like the language that I know how to use today, I see that she created space for me to be like a silly kid. You know, like some kids I feel like are maybe raised in a little bit more restrictive or like conservative households, not politically of course, but just with as far as expression, right? Exactly. And she really facilitated openness in our mother-son relationship so that I could be super silly and weird. Like we would go to back east every summer to visit great grandparents, and I'd like sneak under the table and tie my great grandpa's shoes together and then like sneak back up like no one had seen me. They all knew, but they were all like, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. Hey, why don't you try to stand up, Grandpa Russo?" And he'd be like, "Oh no," you know? And so like that and encouragement to at the time I didn't realize it, but looking back now, that's encouragement to follow the silly, right? And to like continue to express outwardly and be silly and just be funny. So that kind of laid the foundation.
It's one of the greatest gifts a parent can give you. Like so many people that I work with that grew up in quote unquote, like, you know, normal, healthy families in a way, like the society or the parental, like impressions that they press upon you, like this is what you need to this is how you need to act, this is what you need to believe in as far as religion, this is what you need to go to school for. Like all of those things are pressure that are being pressed upon you that inhibit your expression. And one of the greatest gifts that my family gave me as well, like my family were, you know, significant addicts and like really struggling internally with a lot of different things, but they never forced any way that I needed to be in a way. And I actually didn't like that from a child, because I was like, give me some sort of direction. But they gave me that space to like you can do anything that you want to do, just don't do what we did.
Sure.
Right. And that gave me enough space to like figure out myself and test different types of expressions. And so I think a lot of us don't realize like how much of a gift that actually can be. Yeah,
it's a great gift. And I also think, you know, when talking about family systems and parents that maybe don't allow that type of space or have that encouragement, it's not because they're bad. They're not like bad people. No. It might simply be because they've been influenced by the society that we've created, which just in general doesn't really allow enough space for open, playful silliness, right? We're very rigid in the society we've made. We got to do the job and get the degree and make the money and have the wife and the house and do the things. And I feel like that's slowly starting to change, or maybe I've just been to enough sound healings to understand that there's a different world. But like, it's not to talk down on family systems that don't allow that.
Yeah.
Because there's still ways to kind of break free of that rigid structure and allow space for the freedom of creativity or you know, I keep saying silliness, but I guess that's the word of the day, to be expressed.
Yeah. I'm curious how much of that, because when I first watched your videos, I think there was multiple videos around spirituality that were just like cranking on like super spiritual people. And I'm like, oh wow, this is definitely me and friends. And also like, I'm so sick of that. Like I'm so like lighten up in a way.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like how much of that rigidity, like, are you kind of like, is this a conscious process of you identifying like where are these holding patterns in people's, maybe their psyche in a way? Like for me, I'm looking at the same thing on a body. Like where's the rigidity in their body? Where's the holding pattern in their body? And I think with comedy is actually, in my opinion, a fucking healing modality in itself. It was probably one of the best, which we can go down that route. But is like identifying where those rigidities are as a society part of your creative process?
Yes. And that's a phenomenal way to describe it, to compare. So like in body work, right? When you find a pressure point that needs release and you just hone in and you push on it with your elbow or whatever, you press on it and you tell the person to breathe, right? And you're pressing and pressing and pressing until eventually it releases, right? And you've just released this knot from their fascia. That is, in a sense, that's a fantastic metaphor for like my intention behind a lot of the topics and pieces of content that I put out, and behind a lot of the stories that I tell and characters I create, is to press kind of on the fabric of society, like the fascia of the absurdity of the world, you know? So like a great example, I guess, and it's not just with spirituality, because I do multiple comedy stuff outside of spiritual, outside of the conscious space. But within the conscious space, it's really fun.
It's so fun.
Because
it's needed. It's so needed.
Involved in it.
Yeah.
And I was raised a hippie kid. My mom was a deadhead, so she was bringing me to shows all the time. But B, because there is tension in that community, just like there's tension in the sports world. And when I say tension, I mean like that pressure point of tension, right? That rigidity,
like a tight sphincter.
Yeah. What did you just say before you said
a holding pattern?
Holding pattern. So for an example would be, I was in a cacao ceremony a couple of weeks ago, right? As one is. And we were doing the sharing circle at the beginning, which is, I love sharing circles, dude. I love intention circles, not because I'm making fun of everybody in my head, but because I genuinely enjoy hearing what people's intentions are. I think it's really fucking cool when people are openly expressing what their intention is for the evening. But I've started to notice, after going to so many intentional cacao ceremony circles, that a lot of the intentions that people are sharing had started to feel kind of like maybe plastic isn't the best way to describe it, but maybe it is. Maybe that's a good way to describe it. Or like,
contrived.
And there's always one or two people who like, as it's getting closer to their turn, you can see the wheels working in their head. Like they gotta have the best intention of the night, and then they explode with this like beautiful poetic 16 bar intention that they're sharing, and everybody's like,
dude, it's an intention based off of commerce. I think about, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think about like what Rick Rubin says is like when it comes to your own art, in a way, like this is what's coming up for me, is that there's a difference between you actually saying how you feel and not thinking about what anybody else is going to think about that, versus commerce is the other way, where I'm going to say something that's going to appeal to the outside world. That's going to appeal,
right?
Or that's what feels plastic about
or saying something with the intention of getting a reaction, instead of saying something with the intention of expressing for yourself, right? Exactly. And it doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen a majority of the time. It's kind of rare, but it's when you go to enough of these events, or you're in enough spaces where an intention circle type of setting happens, you start to see the pattern, right? And so I kind of identified that as like a holding pattern of sorts. Like there's a tension there. There's a something that I feel should be called out. So I made a video about it. And that was the intention circle video that I shared a week or two ago, which did pretty well online, and people were reacting to it. And so and in the reaction and the reception of it, that was majority positive. I saw, oh, that's the release. That's the same as an elbow on the fascia, is this fun script that I ideated on and wrote up and then produced into a piece of video content, to now where people to maybe give people the ability to see themselves in that video. And so maybe in their next intention circles or whatever, they're going to have a bit more brevity, or maybe they'll have or levity, not brevity,
or they'll be able to breathe,
right. Or they'll have like a bit less, I don't know, maybe ego isn't the right
tension
word, but
in the root chakra.
Tension in the root chakra, yeah, dude. And so so identifying those types of holding patterns is really fun for me. I've done it also in the political space a lot. Yeah, doing videos about like cultural trends or topical issues where I think everybody's just acting kind of bananas, and I want to poke fun at like a trending issue in the news.
You're like a societal body worker.
Yeah, it's kind of what a court jester is,
right?
Yeah.
When another way to kind of look at this in a way, like when you are doing body work on someone, or you could say even acupuncture, or like I'm pressing on someone's body, you're actually creating a micro trauma, which is like you are pressing or attacking the body in a certain way to elicit a healing response, to bring like awareness to that area. Because most people actually aren't occupying their body. Yeah. And so you ever get a body work where, you know, someone presses on you and you're like, holy shit, that's so tight over there. Like I wasn't even like, what's going on over there? Yeah. You're actually not occupying that part of your body. So it's like awareness is the first step in healing anything. I think when it comes to, and we could take, for example, that like the intentional circle, I think people don't really realize when I get into those sometimes, like I feel so tense and so tight in my body. Like I said, I can't breathe. Like there's not any space in a way. And so when I think about what you're doing, it's like you're creating, and this requires such a masterful skill of titration of like, we're just going to poke at it just enough to make people aware of it. And then under the guise of comedy, which like shuts off everyone's defense systems. Because as a body worker, at the same time I'm doing that, I'm making sure that their body feels relaxed and safe to where there aren't other defense systems coming up. Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is just so like, I would love to hear maybe, and I felt like we were going in a certain direction, but would love to hear like, how do you view comedy as kind of like a healing modality in a way? Like,
I think it's super healing. I mean, you know, it's certainly not like on the top pedestal of the most important things in the world.
It's covert.
It's It's healing in the sense, I think comedy is healing in the sense that it allows you to laugh through a trauma and thereby break down that trauma from a stone into pebbles that you can just walk past. Right. And when I say trauma, I mean like, you know, big issues. Whatever the conflicting issues are of the world. Triggers. Like politics, some type of trending cultural issue. You know, in my set, I talk a lot about how I think presidents should do psychedelics. Dude, absolutely. I feel like not enough presidential candidates have even smoked cannabis or done like a ketamine journey at a bare minimum, right?
At a bare minimum, right? Yeah. It should be a prereq.
And, you know, a majority of Americans think that we don't have the best presidential candidates we could have, right? And topic is like a source of tension for a lot of people. So when I write a joke about it or try to turn that topic on its head and make it something that we can all laugh at, I would hope it would remove some of that tension from the topic so that we can just continue like living with less tension at the end of the day. You know, am I articulating that all right?
No, absolutely.
It's like trying to take a topic that brings tension into your life, but instead of being mad and frustrated about it, putting it in a position to where you can laugh at it. So when I say all politicians and presidential candidates are old and bad, and people are like, oh yeah, man, damn. And then I say, yeah, they should all do psychedelics. Can you imagine Biden on a bag of mushrooms? Maybe he'd be able to formulate a full sentence. Now, now that person who was like, damn, is now like, oh man, you're right. And it's just like, it's not going to heal the person. It's not going to heal the divide. It's not like going to do any magic that creates harmony and utopia. But it is going to provide a moment of like levity that I would hope gets ingrained internally so that we're not just living in a state of tension.
It's the levity.
It's
the levity piece. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something that they say in like the coaching healing realm is like never waste a trigger.
Never waste a trigger.
Never waste a trigger.
Oh, that's cool.
Because like when you are triggered, you know that's pressed on some sort of thing. That's bringing up a reactive response where you're actually not conscious anymore. Something, some wounded part of you is like coming up. So they're like never waste a trigger in a way. Yeah. And in the comedy that you do is like, okay, well, let's like identify those and let's like press upon them and bring levity to certain areas. And then what's interesting though is I think about the container of like a comedy show too, because people aren't necessarily there for like, they're there to laugh, one, but to also like anything like nothing's off limits. You know, where in our society, like there's so many things that you just don't talk about. So it gives this sort of like we don't have any places or spaces where there's neutrality and we can talk about all these different things because we might be joking about it. Yeah. It might be like we can make light of or funniness to it, or we can try to bring levity to it. Maybe go in a little bit of a different direction, but
real quick before you do, I just want to touch on one thing you just said because I thought it was really cool. You said there's a I love the bridges you're building between bodywork and comedy. I think it's really dope. There's one thing you just said: no trigger is wasted, or don't waste a trigger.
Never waste a trigger.
So the equivalent to that in comedy is nothing is off limits.
Yeah.
And I am a firm believer that nothing is off limits when it comes to comedy.
Shouldn't be.
No topic is off limits. As long as the intention is laughter and not spite or anger or like getting a reaction out of someone, getting a rise, right?
Yeah.
And this is just my opinion. The intention behind comedy should always be to yield a ha ha ha, not a right? That's how I've always operated. Some people, their whole bread and butter is to get the right, and that's their whole thing. Totally cool. I would never talk down on somebody that does that. But
I mean, they're probably a marketer and probably looking for clickbait.
Yeah, there's some clickbaitiness to that sometimes. Yeah. But I think that's the equivalent there is never waste a trigger is nothing is off limits as long as it's done with tact and taste and with the intention of getting a laugh.
Yeah. It reminds me, dude, Rick Rubin is so good. I've just been devouring
his book is phenomenal. Yeah.
But he just posted a quote that was, the quality of a society's art depends on how free they allow their artists to be.
Whoa, that's cool.
I'm just like thinking about that. Like nothing should be off limits.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we live in a world where there's a lot of things that are off limits.
A lot of things that are off limits, man.
Which that could send us down a rabbit hole. I am curious. So most of my friends would say that I'm a pretty serious human. Like I'm a pretty intense, like very serious human, and I'm just like, how do I become more funny?
I don't think you're super intense.
I know. Well, maybe but from the outside, like I put on the archetype of the teacher.
Oh, sure. Well, you're also a healer. So you I feel like a lot of the people who work in the healing arts are very centered and grounded because that's part of their mission is to provide grounding for the people who need that. Every single time I get a healing session, whether it's a sound healing, bodywork healing, a breathwork session, whatever, part of my intention is always to become more grounded. And so when you're leading in that space, I would just assume you are always a fair bit more grounded than the person you're welcoming into your space, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the opposite of grounded a lot of the times. I'm in the clouds, dude.
It's great.
I'm just tripping up there.
Both of those are necessary.
Yeah.
And like, yes. And also I think we all have our your default state might be up in the clouds. My default state might be like this grounded, like solid human, which is necessary. And it is interesting to see the different career paths and the different like expressions that we have out in the world. But at the same time, and I'm curious for you as well, like, do you ever feel that you want to showcase other parts of yourself besides the archetype, like the archetype of the comedian? Maybe I try on the archetype of the healer, and that's the one that society, for me right now, the world has been like, yes, we want more of that. Yeah. Versus there's other aspects of myself, and I'm currently in the place of how do I showcase these other dynamics, because we're so multidimensional in a way. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a box and I'm in the intention circle and everything's very tight. And it's like, how do I showcase the other parts of myself? Is there, I guess, maybe a better way to phrase that, and I don't know, there's probably not a right or wrong answer, but is like being funny or comedy, and there's lots of different types, is that innate in everyone?
I don't think it's innate. Because I don't think everyone's funny. Yeah. I don't think everyone's funny at all. I think everybody can be funny in the right setting and with the right people. Yeah. But there's introverts and there's extroverts and there's mid-troverts that are a mix, right? Yeah. But as far as like, okay, I have two answers for you. Okay. The first one is kind of in the macro as far as, and in regards to the question of like how to show another side of yourself. Yeah. In the macro, and by macro, I mean like you take a step back, you zoom out and you look at your life timeline, right? Yeah. I have studied a lot of people's lives that I really look up to. A lot of people. Jim Carrey.
Legend.
Yeah. Jim Carrey, Ben Stiller, I really like his work. Yeah. He's done a lot of great stuff, especially as a director. Rick Rubin, you know, and a lot of these people have chapters in their life where they're known for different things during different chapters of their lives. And this is a very recent thought that I'm still kind of evolving with, literally within the past few weeks. Like, this is very recent. Yeah. So when I think about my place in the world as a comedian and an entertainer in the current moment, and then I think about wanting to put other energy into the world that maybe isn't comedy driven or entertainment driven, and I want to write a book at some point. You know, I'd like to provide leadership at some point or be a mentor at some point. Certainly not ready for that now. I need someone to mentor me right now. So I'm not there yet. But I think about wanting to do those things. And a couple years ago, when I would think about that, I'd get really stressed out because I'd be like, how am I ever going to balance doing those big things with this big thing of comedy? But then I started thinking, okay, life is in chapters. Yeah. Rick Rubin had a chapter where he was a badass music producer, and that's what he was known for, right? Yeah. And that was a big chapter, or maybe it was multiple chapters. He had, I don't want to speak for him, but that was like a significant portion of what he was known for. Now he's in his book chapter. He released that book, and he's on every podcast talking about creativity and health and human connection with spirit, and how you can be a better human in the world, and how he has become a human. And he's giving this kind of like, I know guru is an overused term, and he probably wouldn't like that, but in essence, he's a spiritual, he's communicating his spirituality and creative leadership. And he's known to a lot of people now for that primarily, rather than music. Right. Yeah. And same with Jim Carrey, known for acting in big movies. And then he has a whole spiritual side to him with his art that he does now. And this is a different chapter. So in the macro, I think we all have chapters where we can play in different buckets of energy that we're trying to put out into the world. In the micro, when you zoom in and you think, how do I kind of blend comedy or healing or whatever it is that I'm doing as my main priority? How do I blend that with something completely different that I'm also interested in? I don't know, because I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's a balance, right?
It is. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's you know, I'm not writing my book yet, and I'm not giving mentor sessions to anybody yet because I'm not ready. I don't know how to do that yet. But keeping it in mind, not in the back of my mind, but in the middle of my mind, so that it's within my scope of consciousness. I know it's something I'm working toward. That's going to help me develop more ideas of how to integrate those two paths, if you will, into what I'm currently doing.
You don't have to actually know the route right now, but it's there and inside of you, and you know that will be a chapter of you. That's really helpful. There's a quote by Mr. Eckhart Tolle that is,
I've heard of him.
Ding, ding. Oh God, his books, man.
Presence.
I mean, there's presence, the power of now. Stress is, I'm right here, but I want to be over there. Right? And I think there's probably some of that going on inside of myself. Like, I'm actually right here. I want to be over there. There's other things that I want to like do and express, because there's so much in this world. Like, I want to play music. I want to like write a book.
I know.
Like,
there's so much fun shit to do.
I don't know how people
alive.
are bored. It's crazy.
It's insane.
I could fill up all my time learning different things. And but what you just explained right now, it really reminds me of kind of it's called like the Da Vinci effect. And for me, I look at that as kind of this idea of integration, and even beyond that, integration from a somatic perspective. Integration and healing actually just mean the same thing. Like, we're just weaving the web back together. Whether, like, if I have a healing experience, I am just reconnecting all of the parts of myself. The more integrated we are in the way of like, okay, I was a comedian at one point, and now I like want to write a book, and now I want to like be a mentor in some sort of way. The more that, if I look at all the paths in my life and maybe these chapters, you know, because we're living these chapters, how do I weave these chapters together? Or how do I follow those chapters down and see where do they connect? Like, for me, it was, okay, I was a body worker for a while, and then, okay, I'm a teacher for a while. And then I'm like, okay, I did film and production for a while. And then it's like, okay, music. And so I'm seeing like, where do all those meet? Okay. Like, there's, you know, and then breath work, right? So I'm combining breath work and body work, and, you know, obviously showcasing this through educational videos and stuff like that. So it's like, that is the Da Vinci effect in a way of how do I integrate all these things together. But it took time and like being fully in each chapter in itself to develop that mastery, where I do see a lot of other people they want to be over there, but actually they're not like allowing themselves, like, you got to have the, you know, I think Hermosi says it's like, you got to have the Rocky movie, like the cut scene where he's like running up and down the
whole
thing,
training montage,
right? You got to have that scene where you're like putting in the work. So you understand it. And even like Rick Rubin, you can tell he's not necessarily like, so many people resonate with his stuff because you tell that he like lived it and walked it, and he's just sharing the frameworks that he found that worked for him and maybe work for other people. Just like, here, try this, see if this works. Right. Versus like, you should do this, putting the pressure on other people. Well, that's helpful, but you still didn't really tell me how I can be more funny.
Well, there you go. You just were. See, I think the first part of being funny is not trying. And that's literally the first step. I went through a theater program in Los Angeles called The Groundlings. It's a sketch comedy theater. A lot of amazing people came out of there. Kristen Wiig, Will Ferrell, a lot of people. And one of the very first lessons we got was that it was a character focused approach to performance. And if you're committed to your character and the relationship between you and your scene partner, if you're committed, 100% committed,
If you're in it both feet.
yeah, then the funny will come without you trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And that was like a really big lesson for me, because at the time, this was very early, like within the first 2 or 3 years of doing live comedy.
Yeah.
And I was constantly trying to write jokes in my head while I was on stage. Like, what could be funny? Okay, they just said that, so maybe I'm doing the dishes and I find like a spider or something, or like maybe like my mom is over there, and so I just ask her why her ass is out. I don't know, some random thing. And I was like trying to look for the funny, rather than just committing to, okay, I'm doing the dishes and my stepmom is over there and she's like half spider or whatever, whatever the scene is. That's kind of an insane scene, actually. That wasn't a groundling scene, but just committing to the reality of the moment in that class allowed us to build a relationship that brought funny moments out naturally, rather than like seeking and trying and trying to force moments out. So I guess that's my, and which is, I know that's a super vague answer. Like, don't try to be funny and you'll end up being funny. Yeah. But like, I don't know that I don't know that there's an equation to being funny, but I do think there are ways to uncover your sense of humor, and you know what you think is funny, right? You know what you laugh at. You know when you watch a video or see somebody perform, or somebody makes an offhand joke in conversation, you know what you will and will not laugh at, right? I do not think I have any business telling people how to be funny. Yeah. But if the question is posed to me, how can I be more funny? My answer would be inspired by the things you find funny. And that's kind of like general, but there really, I don't think there is an equation. I think you can take every comedy class you can, and you'll hear people tell you want to subvert their perceptions, right? You want to their what's that word? They know what's going to happen. I can't think right now. What is it? Their expectations. Yeah. You want to subvert their expectations, right? You want to surprise them with something. You set them up, and then you give them a punchline, and then you set them up this way, and you tell a story, and then you call it back to the other story, and then a punchline. And you can learn some like structure technique from a comedy class, but just trying to be like naturally funny, I think that takes a level of openness and a level of willingness to fail. Because nobody's 10 out of 10 funny. Nobody hits the ball out of the park every time. So for anybody that wants to be more funny, I'd say take inspiration from things that you find funny.
And to know what you find funny, it requires a deep enough connection to yourself versus what everyone else is told, like bringing it full circle, what society, what your parents, what all the different pressures that have been impressed upon you. Can you clear enough of that out of the way to find yourself, to know what do you like? Right. What do you actually like? Not what everyone else likes, not what you think is going to sell, not like what I'm hearing from you is how do you find your authenticity and move from that place? Because you can learn all the structure, like the setup and the expectation and all the things, but it's not going to mean shit unless you actually know, because it's felt beyond, it is the language beyond words. Like we're communicating energetically, like nervous systems, we're co-regulating with each other beyond whatever we say. And I'm sure you can feel that, like when you're on stage working with a group, you can feel the collective energy and they can actually feel you too. And if 100%. There's parts of yourself where you're not actually connected or you actually don't like you don't fully commit to the thing that you're doing, well, then the whole crowd's probably
You're gonna lose them.
Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a whole alchemy up there, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a concoction of energy, live comedy. There's the physical concoction. You need a stage.
Yeah.
You need bodies in the room. You need light. You need amplification of a voice, right? But then there's also the like metaphysical concoction. You need, first and foremost, a willingness to receive from an audience. And then you need confidence to properly communicate the comedy, the jokes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there's more in there too, but it's definitely an alchemy. And is that off now?
I think we're good.
Okay. And if as soon as you step on stage, if you're not confident, that's the one piece that's going to be missing.
Yeah.
That's going to kind of ruin, like you don't want to start in a hole. And so coming out with a lack of confidence immediately puts you in a space of not having anybody's trust. And if the audience doesn't trust you, then how can they be willing to receive what you're trying to communicate? Yeah. So that's kind of been my approach to stand-up comedy, at least, is trying to do my best to lead that alchemy with confidence up top so that everybody relaxes into a state of willingness to receive what I'm about to force down their throats.
I'm about to just karate chop into them, right?
Yeah.
Just set them up and tee them up. Brent, this has been absolutely incredible. I know we've had some technical difficulties, but we'll get it figured out.
Hell yeah, dude.
But I'm curious, as we kind of tie this up, is there, like, what feels the most alive for you right now? What is, like, is there any maybe topics in the world or something that you're maybe moving through that, or any words for, the general population?
I'll just tell you the thing that came to me first, rather than like trying to filter through a couple of things and to choose the best one. Community feels the most alive for me. Community is the thing that is like driving my energy right now more than anything else. And that's my friend group, the homies we just played basketball with the other day, the homies I shoot videos with in LA. I've put a lot of intentional effort behind building and supporting the people, building the community around me and supporting the people that are part of it, especially in the past like 10 months. Since my last birthday, it was like a big intention for this year of my life was to build community and connect with people in a deeper way. And that's driven my motivation. That's inspired me so much more in my work. It's made me healthier, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually healthier. I've learned so much more. I've learned more about finances. I've learned more about business. I've learned more about life. I've developed and evolved different philosophies toward life and love and approaches toward comedy and business through friendships and relationships. And I think a lot of people, I don't know if community is even a top 5 priority for people. I think finances are in there. I think career is in there. I think love life is in there. Maybe physical health is in there, but I don't know that like community is in there. Like, and not just family and not just friends, but like fuck your tribe, dude. Like tribe, if the world went south and everything, if the zombie apocalypse happened tomorrow, who are the people you'd want to live with? What are the 10 people you'd want to go to and live with? Like, that's your tribe. That's your community. And that's something that I put a lot of intentional focus into bringing value to other people in my community and being open to receive value from people around me. And I think people would be a whole lot healthier if they prioritized community a little bit more.
Dude, it is the most essential nutrient that we don't know that we need. Yeah. And it really is. You just said it so well. Like, it's not, for most of us, it's not even our top 5, but we don't realize that our love life, our family, our finances, like all the things that we think are our top 5, all of those are mostly based on your community. Yeah. Like in your community, like your community, your tribe is going to foster all of that. It's either going to foster it or it's going to take away from it. And, you know, from the community that we've been building that is just absolutely incredible, the Somatic fam, if y'all are listening, I just feel so blessed and honored to be kind of spearheading this community, because I see, and through the past years have seen, how many people are just starved of this essential nutrient that we need, which is human connection, especially in the state of the world right now.
Yeah, it's an incredible support system to build. Yeah. And it's more than just 2 or 3, and maybe it is just 2 or 3 friends for some people. Yeah. But if you can extend that to a couple more, you know, I've put in conscious effort to say yes when I'm invited to things way more often than I used to. I put in conscious effort to check in on my friends, and that's really helped them, and they check in on me too, and it's reciprocated back, and that's really helped me. And that I didn't have it that way 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. It was like I had a couple best friends from home. I got a homie up in Nevada City. I got my homies out here. But now it's like every day I feel like I'm checking in with somebody on something, even if it's just like, yo, you good? Or like, this was hilarious. Or like, hey, I'm coming out there in a month. Let's kick it. Planting a little seed, you know? And it's like invigorating. So it really is a necessary nutrient. Yeah.
The thing that you said the most that landed for me was, you know, consciously trying to bring value to that community and the people around you. And I've, you know, just from the times that I've spent around you, I can feel that's authentic from you. And like, that is something that it just pours out of you. Yeah. Whether it's through comedy and making people laugh, or whether it's through building relationships with other people, like that's the thing that we should be focusing on, is how do we bring value to other people's lives?
Yeah.
And even from your social media and everything, like I can tell the place that you orient yourself from is like, how do I create something for these other people to bring value to their life, which is so fucking beautiful, bro.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I mean, if everybody tried to bring value to everybody else's lives, all of life would just be so much more beautiful to be had.
Right.
Yeah.
So just lastly, is there anything that's coming up for you that you want to share about?
Yep. I got my debut comedy special is coming out March 14th, 2024. It's called Conscious Bro.
Conscious Bro.
If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll see it there. It's releasing with a really cool comedy production label on YouTube specifically, maybe some other places after. But Conscious Bro, March 14th. And then I'm going on tour all through the year, and I do videos every day almost. So
if you have not checked out Brent Pella on Instagram, you need to go watch his videos, or YouTube, wherever he is. You need to go watch his videos, because he's one of the funniest out there that I think is funny.
Thanks, bro.
But that's
you're all that matters.
That's right. That's all that matters. But yeah, dude, would love to do this again soon. Thank you so much. Honored to have you,
bro. I appreciate what you put into the world.
I'm sure this will we'll have to do some editing on this because we did experience some technical difficulty. But yeah, we're out. Thank you so much.
The energy was so high.
Right.
We'll keep it going.
We just burnt the cameras up. We overheated the cameras. All right, that's a wrap.
See y'all.